Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of the Gin and Tonic Show. Our topic today is Muslim immigration. I thought of several creative subtitles which were all rejected by the other members of the panel, including The Coming Storm and The Rising Tide or The Imminent White Genocide. But nobody likes my ideas. If you'd like to join the panel to discuss the topic of the day or a topic of your own choosing, simply send a Skype contact request to the Gin and Tonic Show. Or if you've already sent one, just send me a message, and when we're ready to take callers, we'll call you. Please don't call in the show. When you come on, make sure to mute or even shut down your blog TV altogether so you don't hear everything twice and disorient you and interrupt the show. Also, anyone who calls in is pre-warned that this is streamed live across blog TV and also recorded for later upload on YouTube. Okay, so, Klingschor, get us started.
Very well. I'll try to be quick, try to be concise. I've actually been doing a lot of research for this. My footnotes are bigger than, I often take up more of the page than the actual content of the page itself. And keep your eyes out for a future video very soon on the subject. But essentially, the issues or the real problems with Muslim immigration kind of begin. You kind of need a bit of a backstory for it, and the backstory is this: following World War II, various European nations, well, their economies were kind of, shall we say, fucked, and they opened their gates to mass immigration for cheap labor. And, you know, there were Albanians to Italy or Romanians to Switzerland or whatever. But in the case of, say, England, most of the cheap labor came from Pakistan. In the case of France, most of the cheap labor came from the Barbary, from Tunisia and Morocco and especially Algeria. In the case of Germany, most of the cheap labor came from Kurdistan, Turkey. And so in these nations, you ended up with these large, lower socioeconomic ethnic ghettos. We can ignore the Albanians and Albanians are Muslims, but they're pretty integrated and secularized. So we're going to ignore them. We can ignore the Romanians and so on and so forth. So essentially in Britain and in Western Europe, in Britain, in Holland, in France, and so forth, following World War II, you end up with the creation of these kind of large ethnic ghettos. Now, as ghettos are, these were, of course, crime-ridden, lower socioeconomic, so on and so forth, poverty, high crime rates. None of this is specific or has anything, particularly Muslim about it. There's nothing special here. This is normal, whether you're Italian, Indian, or Irish. This is just what happens in immigration. And the situation in the United States, although it wasn't cheap immigrant labor, so the people who went to the United States were actually immigrating on purpose, like often fleeing from war zones or whatever. So they tend to be more wealthy, more middle class. But they also, following the 1960s, tended to coagulate into distinct ethno-religious cultural enclaves. The special or the notable aspects, the uniquely Muslim aspects of this story begin in the late 1970s. As I'm sure most of you know, the religion of Islam is divided between two main sects, Sunni and Shia. And following the Iranian Revolution of 1979, the Sunni world was quite alarmed by the rise of a radical Shiite republic, especially Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia had already been spending a lot of money spreading Wahhabi Islam throughout the Middle East, but following the Iranian Revolution, they panicked and spent a lot more money. And so by the 1980s, the Wahhabi Islam had been spread all the way from, its influences were palpable from Nigeria to Indonesia. And this is in all across the Muslim world, the Wahhabis, under the title, under the collective of Salafi Islam, the Saudis and their not merely, it's not just the Saudi government, it's also just rich individuals in Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, and so on and so forth. It was in the books, Wahhabi-funded, Wahhabi-influenced books, pamphlets, radio, television, clerics, schools, camps, universities, conferences, everything, everywhere throughout the Muslim world. To give you a horrible example of just how much money and insidious influence the Wahhabis had, a Muslim academic scholar, so to speak, will earn more money in a sabbatical, so on research leave, in a Saudi university for 6 months than he will working 10 years in Al-Azhar University. Al-Azhar being the greatest and most prestigious Muslim institution of learning in the world, which is pretty insane. In any case, this Salafi Islam is under this Salafi Wahhabi Islam is extremely barbaric. It's extremely anti-modern. It's very anti-Western. It's extremely conservative and brutal. And regrettably, some of this Salafi Islam even infiltrated and entered into these Muslim communities living in Britain, living in France, living in Germany. You may be familiar with figures such as Anjem Chowdhury, Salafis. In any case, following the rise of this radical Islam, particularly the Iranian Revolution, the Salman Rushdie affair, Taliban in Afghanistan, and global terrorism of Al-Qaeda, culminating in 9/11, the Western world turned a critical eye on Muslims and Islam, and unfortunately the far right, the social conservatives within the West, swiftly capitalized upon Islam, terrorism, and human rights issues in order to cultivate a new post-Cold War enemy figure.
I have a quick question. First of all, I'd like to respond. Someone in the chat said it was unprofessional of me to eat during the show. I'm just really depressed over the coming destruction of the Western society, so I'm eating comfort food. But what I want to really get down to is the distinction between the usage of the terms Salafi and Wahhabi, if they are connected things. You know, what is it a case of every square is a rectangle, but not every rectangle is a square? And, you know, what is the defining line between the use of the two terms? How do they relate and how are they distinct?
Wahhabis, Salafism was a very general term that applied to kind of different ideologies initially. So you had modernist Salafists, and then you had ultra-traditionalist Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Hanbal, Wahhabi Salafists. And regrettably, the modernist Salafists have been driven to extinction. So now, essentially, Salafists are Wahhabis, or at least they follow Ibn Taymiyyah, which makes them essentially the same. You see, the Wahhabis are not necessarily like representative of all Salafism, but they marketed themselves as Salafists. They didn't spread Wahhabism as Wahhabism. They didn't say, yeah, this is the cult of Saudi Arabia, join. They marketed themselves across the world as Salafis, as pious, as, you know, following the way of the true early Muslim community.
So Wahhabism is named after their leader, something
Muhammad
Wahhab.
bin Abdul Wahhab, I think, yes.
Okay, so categorically, Wahhabism fits within Salafism, but of course isn't representative of all of it.
Yes.
Now, but all Wahhabis are Hanbalis, right?
Yes. Or
But not all
Neo-Hanbali.
Salafis?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Well,
I would say Neo-Hanbali. I mean, the official madhab of Saudi Arabia, the official school of fiqh, of jurisprudence in Saudi Arabia, is the Hanbali school. Oh, sorry, Hanbali. But in reality, I would say it's Neo-Hanbali. Does that make sense?
yeah. That's all I wanted to know. So, hope I didn't get you too far off.
No, not at all. Well, essentially, following the 1980s and the rise of this radical Salafi and Iranian Revolution and so forth and so on, reverse that, we have the rise of anti-Muslim bigotry. Some people call it Islamophobia. I absolutely detest that term. So I'm going to say anti-Muslim bigotry. But, just prejudice and stupid conspiracy theories. This is especially comes from Christians, far-right Christians in the United States, particularly with their satanic conspiracy theories and their beliefs that Muslims are some kind of giant satanic force in the world, destroying everything. And these kind of views predate this, but they were minority. However, following the rise of global Islamism, these sort of, out of all the different kinds of bigotries there were, this one sort of gained the most preeminence, and it's sort of now the new fashionable. Islam and Muslims are the new fashionable enemy figure for far right, and of course, most of the the xenophobic, nationalist, neo-fascist, conservative parties that have arisen in the last few decades. Most of them have arisen on the platform of anti-Islam, anti-Muslims. Geert Wilders, for example, the EDL, the BNP, so on and so forth. Parties such as this. And there's actually quite a few of them all across Europe. And so some people deny anti-Muslim bigotry. I find this quite curious. I just think that people who do kind of are living under a rock. I even have ex-Muslim friends, for example, who, this is anecdotal, I know, but there's a plethora of evidence and statistics you can check on perceptions towards Muslims in Western societies. Friends of mine who, for example, have to wear, hijab and abaya and niqab or whatever. So they're not even Muslim, but because they're wearing Muslim dress, they get discriminated against. They get abused. They get, people shouting shit at them. If you just go onto Google Books and you type in Islam, jihad, you get a massive list of crank nonsense literature. Robert Spencer, Pamela Geller, what's that Jewish guy's name? Walid Shobat.
Is that how you pronounce his name? I've been calling him just Shubat.
Yeah, Shubat. Daniel Pipes. Daniel Pipes. Yeah, absolute crap. I mean, and the thing is that this is not really about Islam per se. This is all about immigration, and that's why you'll notice that very often they talk about things like taqiyya and they talk about stealth jihad, because it's all about immigration. The logical implication of all the things that these conservatives are saying about Islam and Muslims is that you cannot trust any Muslims and we have to throw them out of our countries. That's the logical conclusion from everything that they're saying. So it's basically, for the far right, Islam and Muslims is just the new kind of global enemy figure following the fall of communism.
Doesn't the Shubat guy claim that he used to be this notorious terrorist?
Yes, and in reality he was not. Apparently,
I don't know. I mean, maybe if he's killed as many people as he's claimed, and he's done all these things, but then he converted to Christianity, and now the FBI for some reason isn't looking at him. Isn't that proof that he's turned over a new leaf and that? Just go on. I don't even... Rationalizer, you don't have your hand up, but you've been quiet for a while. Do you have anything to say?
Are you joking?
Yeah, of course. Of saying.
That wasn't a serious. You weren't serious, were you?
No.
That's all right then. In that case, continue.
Well, I just think it's hilarious. He's like, yeah, and then I murdered these children, but then I came to Christ, and now the authorities just said, oh, all right. the FBI and NSA agents who were going to detain me were like, oh well, sorry.
Oh, at least Abu Hamza knows what he needs to do. Just get to America and say, look, I've become a Christian. It's in the error of my ways. If God can forgive me, who are you? So that's all he needs to do, and it's just tell him that and see if he can get away with it.
When the SEALs kicked open Osama's door, he should have just been like, no, the power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels you. Like, oh, all right, he's turned over a new leaf, he has. And they just give it. I don't know why the Navy SEALs talk in these big parts.
Yeah, Governor, he's turned over a new leaf. Want your chimney swept?
Whenever I I automatically go for the Monty Python. So, yeah, the Navy SEALs are they've got the handkerchiefs on their heads, like the Gumbies. Oh, all right. Well, have a good day now, isn't it? I'm sorry, I'm done. Okay, go back to something. I just want to realize what a cartoon character that Waleed Shoebat is.
Oh my God.
The shamelessness of this guy going around saying he was some kind of hardcore killer, which is ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, I mean... yeah, and he appears on, what does he appear on? Pat Robertson? And who's the crazy Christian idiot? The old man?
We have a few.
Come on, the big one. That Pat, he's got the 700 Club. Pat Robertson. Yeah, he appears on his show to talk about how Islam is satanic. I mean, it's just idiotic. It's not fair and it's not accurate criticism of Islam, which is what we're all about. It's just kind of, it's rhetoric, it's vitriol, it's invective for the sake of an ideology. Conservatism, Christianity, all this kind of nonsense. Which is where, of course, we take issue with this kind of thing. And so basically, the relevance of anti-Muslim bigotry is that it actually isolates Muslims in Western countries and drives them towards Salafism. So the first and foremost, the problem begins with Salafism. Salafism spreads to these communities, but then in response to global Islamism, you have this anti-Muslim bigotry, which is a natural response. After the Iranian Revolution, after the Salman Rushdie affair, after the rise of the Taliban, after Al-Qaeda's many terrorist attacks, remember, the 9/11 was only the second terrorist attack. 9/11 was only the second Al-Qaeda terrorist attack on the World Trade Center. There was one in 1992, I think. And of many others, like the Kenyan embassy attack, the attack on that U.S. ship, so on and so forth. It goes back a long way, and so it's a really logical sequence. Like, it's natural that you would have anti-Muslim bigotry in response to the rise of all these ostensibly Muslim, terrorist acts and actions and parties and polities. Doing all their stuff in the name of Islam. So, it's what you would expect, regrettably.
Can I interject again? I know I keep interrupting you, I'm sorry.
No, by all means.
The way you phrased it, it's like you said it's understandable there'd be bigotry. Of course, nobody, not you, not me, not anyone is going to say that bigotry is justifiable, but let's face it, it's true. It is predictable, and in that sense, it is understandable.
Rather than saying it's understandable, as in you can empathise with it, it's expected.
Yeah, right.
You do. There's always a moron somewhere waiting to kill someone for something. And whether the moron is religious, killing people in a plane, or whether the moron is the person that stabbed the Muslim taxi driver in America after the attacks, there's always moron. You've heard of the film Rebel Without a Cause. There's always a moron without a cause.
Yeah.
They're just looking for someone to kill in someone else's name.
Yeah, but what I was going to say is, if you accept the basic premise of a religion like Christianity, for example, and you believe that everything is a struggle between an agent of pure good and an agent of pure evil and darkness, I can understand how, to someone who is already primed with those kinds of superstitions, why the notion that Islam is created by the devil, I can understand why that fits together. If their only experience, if you have religion A and the only experience they have with religious group B is hostility, then I can understand. I mean, there was this is a YouTuber named Yoka. He's not exactly a great scholar of theology, but he after the Fort Hood shooting, he put up a video just ranting about how Islam was from the devil, and I think there was nothing about that sort of got my back up, because you can hear kind of the pain and the shock in his voice. And when out of nowhere another religion is suddenly antagonizing you, I can understand if they're already brought up to think that it just, you put two and two together from their perspective. Of course, we don't, as skeptics, take that for granted, so we just think, well, we don't draw this distinction, and we try not to practice exceptionalism for one faith or the other. A lot of the great massacres in the name of Christianity are historical now. Unless you count Iraq, for example, as because Bush saying God told me to do it, and that, unless you count that. So I mean, I can understand how Christians might think that way, and really people with satanic conspiracies as a whole. You'll hear for example, conservative Christians, the really nutty variety. They'll say, well, you have these liberals and Muslims and gays and atheists, and I thought, well, the groups that you just listed don't always necessarily get along with each other for various reasons. But everyone who's different, this is the calling card of someone who's paranoid, if not outright bigoted, is no matter how unrealistic it might seem, everyone who is different, everyone that you don't like, everyone who you feel has a mutually antagonistic relationship with you, they're all in some confederacy. And the only way that could ever make any conceivable sense is if you believe that there's a devil who is pulling the strings of groups with, ostensibly different agendas and making them somehow work in concert against you, the true believer. And I think that you hear that a lot from Muslims as well.
I think that if really there is such a thing as God, a good God, and an evil Satan, then the only thing that makes sense to me is that this good God created us all and doesn't interfere with us whatsoever, because he wants to value our freedom to do whatever we like and to choose to do the right thing because we understand it's the right thing, rather than because we've been ordered or threatened. And Satan, on the other hand, now I know if I were Satan, what I would do is I would come to people at a time when they're pretty ignorant about the universe, and I would claim to be the creator of the universe, warn them that there's a Satan that wants to trick them, but you're lucky that God favours you and God has brought you this messenger and telling you what to do. And I'll go around all the different groups around the world and I'll tell them different things, but promise them all Jerusalem. Right, Jerusalem's yours until the end of time. And by the way, the end of time won't come until you all fight each other. And once you've promised them all the same thing and told them that they won't go to paradise until they've all killed each other, you just sit back and then watch them kill each other. Oh,
Go ahead.
There's there was something that I wanted to bring up that's recently been in the world news unexpectedly, and what it is recently in Reading there was due to be a debate. Atheist Human Secular Society, and it was just a student group. They were going to be having a debate on blasphemy, whether it should be okay to blaspheme, or if religion should be protected from freedom of speech. what they did to try to attract attention to this debate, to illustrate the point, they had a table before the debate, and on it they put a pineapple, and they put a name on it, Muhammad. And then I'll tell you what happened. I'll read the official statement. Today, the Reading University Atheist, Humanist and Secularist Society participated in the Freshers' Fair organised by Reading University students. We spent several hours talking to other students and visitors, promoting the society and encouraging people to attend our forthcoming discussion on the topic, Should we respect religion? Amongst the material displayed on our stall was a pineapple. We labelled this pineapple Muhammad to encourage discussion about blasphemy, religion and liberty, as well as to celebrate the fact that we live in a country in which free speech is protected and where it is lawful to call a pineapple by whatever name one chooses. Towards the end of the afternoon, we were informed by a member of staff that there has been complaints about the pineapple. Despite the fact that no complaints had been made at any point to anybody on the stall, our commitment to freedom of expression meant that we refused to remove the pineapple from our stall. After a few minutes, we were told by another member of staff, either the pineapple goes or you go. Whereupon they seized the pineapple and tried to leave. However, the pineapple was swiftly returned and shortly was displayed again with the name Muhammad changed to the name Jesus. Shortly afterwards, the second staff member returned and ordered them to leave the fair. At this point, a group of around 5 students, some of whom self-identified as Muslims, approached the stall and began to criticise us, asking/telling us to remove the pineapple. Though these students mainly engaged in discussion, one removed the label from the pineapple with our permission. As the staff member merely raised his voice and shouted at the president when he attempted to explain our position, we were ultimately forced to leave the venue. However, several other societies at the fair offered to continue distributing our leaflets, and we continued to hand out our leaflets outside. The socialist group believes in freedom of expression. Our intent in displaying a pineapple labelled Muhammad was to draw attention to the cases where religion has been used to limit this and other fundamental rights, such as the imprisonment of Gillian Gibbons. We did not expect to be forced out of the Freshers' Fair because of a pineapple, and we were disappointed that the RUSU took this action. So what you've basically got here is a planned debate on whether religion should be exempt from any form of mockery, if blasphemy should be prohibited. And merely putting a pineapple on the table with the name Muhammad on it was enough to get them kicked out and to have their pineapple confiscated. I love that bit. You can imagine they're all fighting over this pineapple. Give me that pineapple. But then a quick rename to Jesus to try to placate everyone. But then no, sorry, the pineapple's either the pineapple goes or you go. It's an ultimatum. I wonder if that's the first time in history anyone has ever been given that ultimatum. Is there anyone in the past that has ever been told, look, either you go or the pineapple goes? The very fact that it was called Muhammad was insulting. It was offensive. You can find this story by googling offensive pineapple. If you Google offensive pineapple, you'll find the story. So today we have the Rationalizer pineapple, by which I am deeply offended.
You can also find that story online by searching for the terms pineapples, peace be upon them. Shantanu, thank you for joining us. You had a comment somewhat in the same vein. Are you with us?
Hello?
Hello, thank you for joining us.
I can't hear anything. You're breaking up quite a bit.
Rationalizer, you try talking, see if it's just me.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you quite clearly. Yeah.
Okay, well, Atheismo is not very interesting, so ignore him and just talk to us instead.
All right. How are you guys, by the way?
Doing quite well.
Well, mainly offended, but other than that, I'm fine.
All right.
Exhausted after sinful activities.
We're doomed. That's how we're doing. 1 billion scimitar-wielding maniacs are immigrating to the West to destroy us. But other than that,
I can feel a beard growing on me already. Like, it's just this process of Islamization is so insidious.
Other than that, I'm fine.
Yeah. I mean, in fact, even your profile picture has changed, has morphed, hasn't it? It's turned more and more Muslim.
That's right. It used to be a man with a top hat. Used to be a Victorian gentleman with a riveting tail chap, but over time the Islamization process has just transformed my top hat into a turban, give me a beard, and now a glorious message, O Prophet.
I'd like to, just before we carry on, the Blog TV has just said we featured, in case it makes any difference, if you just joined us, we're a live chat show about the subject of Islam and pineapples. If you want to call in, you can do. If you've got Skype, send a friend request to the Gin and Tonic Show. So hopefully a few more people will stick around and enjoy the chat with us and our friends.
So, Shantano, you wanted to talk about an addendum to Draw Muhammad Day, given the recent furor. Go ahead and explain what you were talking about.
Yeah, basically when you had the Draw Muhammad Day, I mean, not you guys, of course, but in general, the atheist community, if you like, when they started the Draw Muhammad Day, it was kind of effective because it created a ruckus for a bit, and then people realized that, right, okay, so we better get used to offensive pictures of Muhammad, being all over the internet. Now, if you create a similar thing for the video, it might be just as effective, you know. Because clearly, despite Draw Muhammad Day, people are still insulted by videos depicting Muhammad. So why not have a similar thing for videos?
Well, I don't think it needs a different day. We could just expand upon the current theme, so it could be it could be a still image of Muhammad. It could be a cartoon. It could be expressive dance or live action. You know,
I don't think that it should specifically be Draw Muhammad Day. I think it should just be potato. I think it should be Blasphemy Day. I mean, like, it should also be able to include, for example, the bloke in India, the skeptic who has been persecuted by the Catholic Church for exposing the fact that the weeping statue was weeping freaking sewage, and then because of that he's been persecuted and
well, not only persecuted, but he under the law, the anti-blasphemy law, there's a warrant out for his arrest, and you know these people
Where is
turning up.
I mean,
this is it. In India, is it?
Also, I mean, take for example, Holocaust denial is illegal in a lot of European countries, and as crappy as Holocaust denial is, I think that people should be allowed to say. People should have the right to be dickheads, and I think that people. So there's that. Like this should also be included.
You can't stop someone from being stupid by forcing them to not open their mouth.
Yeah,
but even though when stupid people talk, the level of stupid in the world does go up. You know, you've got to give them the right to be stupid.
There's
the thing that you were asking about. I think it's India, and I've forgotten his name. But
I know it's
what
India.
it was. What it was the Catholic Church claiming a miracle because water was coming out the feet of a Virgin Mary statue. So people kept turning up and collecting the water and drinking it as a kind of miracle cure for stuff. And this guy, Sanal something, he turned up, had a look at it, and realised that the water was due to a leakage of a pipe coming out of the toilets. So basically all he did was said, guys, don't fall for this. You're drinking piss and shit. And rather than saying, great, glad you told me that, I haven't got fecal failure, so I shan't be continuing, people were very offended that this poo and wee water wasn't miraculous. And the Catholic Church prosecuting him for blasphemy. Like, how can it be blasphemous to point out a fact?
It always is, isn't it? I mean, it always is. I mean, just pick up a scripture and start reading, and you'll be accused of committing blasphemy sooner or later. I mean, that's always the way.
Classic.
But I don't think having a general blasphemy day would be as effective as specifically to Muhammad, because with blasphemy, if we had such a thing going on, people wouldn't really change their views about blasphemy in general. I don't think, because blasphemy to everyone knows blasphemy goes on all across the world. It's just certain countries have laws that prevent that happening in their country, and that's the problem with blasphemy in general. But I think with Muhammad specifically, even if it goes on outside their country, they're offended by it, and that's the problem there. So I think if we had like people in the Muslim community need to realize that that people are offending their religion anyway, so they might as well get used to it, and that's the thing we're trying to get them to realize, I guess.
I guess the only problem is that
I just want to comment on the Draw Muhammad Day thing. There were two that I was aware of. One was by Go That Funk on YouTube.
Goth
at Funk or Go That Funk, which makes more sense.
No,
and,
I don't know.
Well, by some bloke, and he encouraged people to draw Muhammad. Thunderfoot later had his Draw Muhammad Day campaign, but the difference with them were on Thunderfoot's video. He said, "I encourage everyone to draw Muhammad," and I don't remember what he put on, but it was
something really stupid. Muhammad, the pedophile
having a
bear.
poo with pedo bear on it or something. I can't remember. And then, but
Classic.
Go That Funk. What he did, I thought was really, really good. He said, "For Draw Muhammad Day, what I want you to do is draw an inoffensive picture of Muhammad, because there are a lot of people out there who are just simply offended by the fact that there's a picture of Muhammad." And he said, "What I want you to do is draw stick figures or anything you like, and put that up." And I remember doing one for that, and it was like, Stickman, come on, hey everybody, this is Muhammad Ali, the famous boxer, and then another one, come on, this is Muhammad, the president of the United States.
Pakistan.
Yeah, I don't remember what his name was. And then I brought it in, and then suddenly, like, another a stick figure flew past on a buraq, and then it said, "Oh look, here comes Charlton Heston." And then finally, and I just want to announce that we do have the Islamic prophet Muhammad in the audience. And it turns around, there's like 100 stick men. We go, "Oh, there he is at the back," or has he left? And what I thought was good about his idea was it was to show people how stupid it was to be offended simply by a drawing. Whereas, if someone drew a picture of my mum with her knickers down shitting on my dad's head or something, or my mum coming out of a pig's arse as a poo, I might be a little bit pissed off, So, sure, I think that person's got the right to do that, and I actually wouldn't punch them for it, but it's not the kind of thing to encourage other people to do. I thought the Stickman one was very good.
Yes, and that's...
I disagree with you entirely. I think the more offensive they are, the more effective they are, because essentially the idea of this exercise is to let people know that these things, I mean, you can take offense, but you can't go about creating a ruckus on the street, killing people because of that. I think that is what we're trying to get at more than anything else. And if we don't have offensive pictures, it might not be as effective. But if you have offensive pictures, people will realize this is happening every day. So we might as well not go out on the streets and kill people.
Well, now see, the thing is, when this first came up, Rationalizer and I actually had we butted heads at length about this very issue. And now I think that Rash, Shantanu, and myself are at a three-way disagreement, because Rash was comparing the way Thunderfoot and Got That Funk, and we'll get to you in a minute, Klingschor. He was comparing the way Got That Funk and Thunderfoot set the tone. But I think, Rash, you said that got that funk, even though he got many entries into his version of Draw Muhammad Day that he considered offensive, he still allowed all of it without censorship. And you said that you wouldn't have allowed all the content that got that funk allowed. Do you still feel that way?
Yes. If they want to draw offensive pictures of Muhammad and post them on YouTube, that's fine. If they want me to promote them, they can get lost. You know, just because I think that someone else should have the right to do it doesn't necessarily mean that I am going to promote them saying it. I think the EDL are a bunch of twats. For example, if I was going to say something that the EDL said, I would do it to disagree with them. I wouldn't let them post videos on my channel saying, "We want our country back." So, you know,
don't you want your country back?
But, oh, no, that's
you're breaking up, Rationalizer, to me. You sound like C3PO.
I am. And
I think you're very unpatriotic, Rash man, for not.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. There's no one to. They're just more.
Very, very unpatriotic.
It's just a mantra that they've heard. You know, you get 16-year-olds making videos like wanting their country back.
You've clearly been Islamized. You've been Islamized.
And then these people are usually like up in Yorkshire or somewhere. They live with sheep. You know, where there probably aren't any Muslims or something. But anyway. I support the right of people to say and do stupid things, but that doesn't mean that I have to promote them on their behalf. If my plan had been to post inoffensive material because I was trying to achieve a specific goal, and that was to show there'll be a lot of Muslims out there who just simply haven't bothered thinking about it because it's probably not interesting to them. So when you drag them into the argument, you either want them to be full draw Muhammad against it or to not care. And if the first thing you do is say, we want the right to draw Muhammad as a pig poo, then a lot more people are going to be offended and take the side of, no, you shouldn't be allowed to draw it. Whereas if you just bring out some really soft images of, like, I don't mean soft porn, like stick men and stuff, then you're not insulting anyone. And the majority of people looking at that, when some nutcase who's like in the extreme comes up and shows them this stick figure going, "Look, they're drawing Muhammad, isn't this terrible?" They'll just say to them, "Well, get lost, you're being a knob." And then they won't listen to the extreme people. Whereas, you know, there are people that are somewhere in the middle, not giving it much thought. These extremes come up and show them pictures of pig poo Muhammad and stuff. And then they, "Oh, this is terrible." And then they're on their side. So, you know, in my opinion, it was better to do it the softly approach, to try to bring people gently round to the idea that simply drawing someone itself is not an insult.
Okay, guys, it's a matter of public record here. Hello? The Rationalizer refused to promote EDL videos on his channel. The Islamization of Europe is complete. The thing is, and this sort of goes on from what Rashman was saying, I was going to say earlier, is that the problem, one of the problems I have with Draw Muhammad Day, why I would consider widening it a bit, is that anti-Muslim bigots just exploit it as an opportunity to just be dickheads towards Muslims. And that kind of irritates me that I would be allied by default with these kinds of individuals. And the thing is, I guess the real question is, what's the point? What are you actually trying to achieve? Because, like, let's look at the actual practical outcome here. Are Muslims more, amenable to drawing Muhammad now? Well, I don't know. I mean, global riots, people dying in embassies. It looks like it's actually kind of having the reverse effect. Like, let's poke the anthill even harder. They'll stop coming out eventually. Like, I don't know. I question the point. I mean, if it's simply just to demonstrate that you can draw Muhammad as a pig's arsehole, well, fantastic, whatever, go knock yourself out. But if it's actually to change people's minds, I don't think that drawing Muhammad as a pig's arsehole is going to change anyone's mind. Well, I think that the Rationalizer's what Rational was talking about, I exactly what I agree with. Like, it's things that are actually thought-provoking, things that actually expose how ridiculous it is, they are more effective than simply vitriol and invective.
I don't think that's the point. I don't think the point is to change hearts and minds. I think the point is you can't tell us what we can and can't do.
Yeah. And also this reminds...
What's the point?
Let Shintano go, and then we'll go Rationalizer.
Basically, this reminds me of Sid Vicious. There's an analogy here. Sid Vicious used to wear this swastika on his shirt, and a lot of the Sex Pistols were openly offensive, but they were clearly not racist or anti-Semitic. And originally, I was offended when I saw that because I really like that band. But then I later found out they're doing it because they want to they want those symbols to lose their offense, their meaning, basically. So when people see swastikas in the future, they won't be offended by it. That's what they were trying to do. Or even the word nigger. If everyone used the word nigger in an inoffensive way, it'll lose its meaning. And that's my point to this. If something is offensive, you need to make people get used to that. You need to stop taking offense to that. You're allowed to take offense, but you certainly aren't allowed to burn, embassies down or whatever.
Well, the internet. I'm sorry. The internet is certainly doing its job there. If you're offended by the word nigger, don't ever play World of Warcraft or any other kind of online game. I think I was called a nigger about 50,000 times a day on that game. Every time. It's just ridiculous. I don't know if it's making it less offensive or if it's just making it so that now everybody can be called it. But I've become desensitized to it. I'm trying to be wary, or.
I remember there used to be a website called Nigger Free Hosting. And it was just a hosting company, and they said, we're a hosting company and we don't employ niggers.
Wait, what?
That was it. That was the business pitch of this company. It said something like, are you tired of phoning up support and having a nigger answer the phone? Well, if you don't like niggers, go with us. We're Nigger Free Hosting. Didn't last very long though. It was there for about a week that I noticed, and then you go back later to show someone, and it just doesn't exist anymore. But niggers are a good example because it could be used in a non-offensive way. However, you've got to be aware that people do find it offensive. So, for example, I could say, the other day I was out and this guy came up to my friend and called him a nigger. Now, if you're offended by me saying nigger in that context, in my opinion, what I'm actually doing is putting down the person that used it in a derogatory way. But I can't talk about black people being niggers because a lot of people will take it as an offensive word simply because it has been meant as an offensive word for so long. When you grow up and you're being beaten up on a regular basis, and as you're being kicked in the face, you're being called a dirty nigger or something, then strangely enough, as you get older, if people say it, you tend to find it offensive. Just because you don't mean it to be offensive doesn't mean that you should go around saying it and expect other people to not be offended. What I think is good is that black rappers are going, I'm a nigger in the song and stuff, and it just goes straight out of my head. It might as well just be saying I'm a friend or something. I've become that desensitized to it in rap songs, and it's kind of becoming, for those people at least, it's kind of becoming an empowering word where they feel strong enough to go around going, you're my nigger, you're my friend, you're my black friend, and that's up to them. They can do it. But if that black person goes up to a person that is deeply offended by it, black people are also offended by other black people using the word, And with saying that we should draw Muhammad offensively to tell them that they can't tell us what to do, what's the point of that? They can't tell us what to do. It's as simple as that. In the UK, I'm legally allowed to draw Muhammad as a pig or whatever I want to do. I'm legally allowed to be an offensive asshole. Nobody can tell me I can't do it. it's illegal for someone to stop me. So there's no point. The better point, I think, he's saying to them, do you realise that the whole concept of not being able to draw Muhammad in any way whatsoever is really very silly? Even these pictures from many hundreds of years ago where they've got Muhammad giving out stuff to orphans and stuff, and they've blotted out his face so that you can't see him. They're not offensive in the slightest, but a lot of people say, no, you can't do that at all. I just happen to think that not offending someone is a better way of getting them to see how something really stupid is really stupid.
Well, the thing is, I wouldn't go so far as to say, like if I was running an event like that, I wouldn't make, as you suggested, I wouldn't make the call subjectively as to what was too offensive or what was not offensive enough or what was. But I do agree that overall, it's more dignified to do to take the tone that Got That Funk or R and Raw took, and that is, we're going to do this to make a point. There's no need necessarily to be offensive. And frankly, if you want to really offend Muslims, if you want to really blaspheme, don't draw an insulting image. Just make a solid golden statue of Muhammad and worship it. Shantano, I'm going to let you go. We have another caller who's been waiting a while. Thank you, as always. Take care.
Hey, I just want to quickly note, I think another problem with Draw Muhammad Day is it kind of potentially is a misdiagnosis of the problem, and so it's the wrong cure. It's the wrong response, because, consider, what is the actual cause for Draw Muhammad Day? What's the actual cause for Muslims being angry about people drawing Muhammad? I question whether it's actually purely about blasphemy. For example, South Park made that video. What is it? Super Happy Awesome Friends or something?
Yeah,
and they had Muhammad.
Super Adventure Club. Oh no, you're thinking of another one. Yeah, that's right.
The bear one.
No, I mean when Muhammad is in South Park as a superhero who has the power to breathe fire.
Super Best Friend Club or something. Yeah.
And is there with Jesus and Seaman and so on and so Buddha and so on and so forth. And Muhammad was portrayed in that, and there was absolutely nothing. No outrage, no nothing. But a mere 3 years later, of course, you have this global Muslim outrage about the Danish cartoons. But even then, that was actually after a concerted campaign because when the cartoons first came out, nothing happened. Nothing happened when they first came out. It actually only occurred after these imams went around, certain imams went around Muslim countries, basically lobbying for support, and it gained support of the campaign. So again, it's sort of like, so what's up with that? Nothing happened originally, and then it was only after a concerted campaign that people got angry about it. Moreover,
I saw the pictures that they distributed. It went on a tour of these different mainly Muslim countries, and these are the things, and they actually added pictures that hadn't been published.
That's right. But more than that, Muslims have always depicted Muhammad. Muslim art throughout history you can go and type into Google Muslim art of Muhammad or something, or Muslim pictures of Muhammad, and there are hundreds. Persian, Turkish art. Even Umayyad coins, I believe.
But not in the Orthodox era.
No, Islam has gone back and forth between iconoclasm. How do you say that? What's that? Smashing all pictures. What do you call that? Iconoclasm?
No. Well, maybe.
Religious tolerance?
No, it's definitely iconoclasm. So since Muslims have traditionally depicted Muhammad, what is this now? I don't know. It kind of, and it isn't just Shia, but it isn't just Shia. Sunni Turkish Muslim tradition also is replete with pictures of Muhammad. And not just pictures of Muhammad with his head as a big flaming, carrot. It's just Muhammad, actually you can see his face. So, it's I don't know. I question what it's about.
Oh, by the way, we were saying earlier about how sometimes a statement of fact can be considered blasphemy, like the sewage Jesus or a lot of people's scriptures. And it reminded me of this quote from The Picture of Dorian Gray, where Lord Henry says, "It is perfectly monstrous the way people go about nowadays, saying things against one behind one's back that are absolutely and entirely true." And that's certainly the case. Half the time you say, well, here's a verbatim reading from the Bible, the Quran, especially the Hadiths. The Hadiths are just a gold mine. I think we've gone over that many times. And they'll say, well, you are just trying to insult. Well, I guess your God beat me to it because these are his words. So I guess he's the blasphemer. You need to take to account. It's unfortunate. And sometimes it's not even if they're aware. A lot of rank and file believers aren't very well versed in their own scriptures and religious writings. But sometimes even when they become aware, you're like, well, that was there. Yeah, but still, the only reason you're pointing it out, is because you're trying to insult us and so forth. What can you do?
Shall I continue a bit with the narrative of the problems with Muslim immigration whilst you're bringing on the next caller? Because there's like another little chapter that I could go into.
Yeah, we have two more callers. If those callers are on in the chat, just wait a minute. We're going to allow Klings a little bit more time because he spent a lot of time during his presentation
researching this. Yes. So basically, so you have global Salafism and Islamism in the Iranian Revolution and 9/11, and Salafism spreading in I don't know what percentage, in some areas of the immigrant Muslim communities in Europe and America and Australia and so forth. Then you have anti-Muslim bigotry in response to global Salafism and all the terrorist attacks, and in response to the anti-Muslim, prior to the rise of global Salafism, 9/11, Muslim immigrants most tended to be identified by their respective ethnic denominations, such as Arab, Turk, Bengali, etc. But following these events, they came to be identified by their religious affiliation. But they also self-identified as well. It was a double process. It wasn't merely that they were typified by Western culture. They also came to self-identify by their religious affiliation and not their ethnic affiliation, particularly second and third generation. And in response to the eruption of anti-Muslim bigotry in the West, Muslim immigrant communities became even more isolate and conservative, as previously apathetic and passive Muslims were driven towards fundamentalism and extremism by the hostility they received. So, this anti-Muslim bigotry reinforces an us versus them mentality amongst Muslim immigrants, who further turn towards, Wahhabi Salafi Islam for identity and refuge. And I have friends who this happened to, friends who are now ex-Muslims, but who actually became radicalized because of the hostility they received. Have you got the caller yet? Hello?
You might as well carry on because Atheismo's gone for a wee way.
Oh, okay. How delightful. Well, another uniquely Islamic problem, and this is the most interesting for me, another uniquely Islamic problem, so to speak, with Muslim immigration, and this is kind of one of the ones that people are most concerned about, I suppose you could say, although they may not be conscious of, the technicality behind it. But another uniquely Islamic problem with Muslim immigration arises from the religious self-identification of Muslim immigrant communities. So, during the normal process of immigration, it's natural for new immigrants within a host nation to retain cultural baggage from their place of origin. So whether they're, Indians, Italians, or Irish. And often the cultural baggage is harmless, like with the Italians, let's say, Italian cooking. But sometimes immigrants will retain cultural baggage, beliefs and practices that are incompatible with the laws and values of their host nations. So, I don't know, for Italians, for example, crappy gender roles, believing women should just stay in the kitchen, that kind of thing. When such a situation arises, the natural process of integration, particularly amongst second and third generation immigrants, typically eliminates problematic cultural baggage. But this is not the case with Muslim immigration because, given the religious identification and character of these immigrant communities, certain conservative cultural, political, and ethical beliefs and practices are championed and lauded and shielded under the auspices, under the protection of religion, rightly or wrongly. So under the shield of Islam, certain cultural baggage is retained and reinforced in Muslim immigrant communities. And this varies from community to community, but this can include, and I have a big list here, strict gender roles that emphasize male superiority and a sense of male privilege and entitlement at the expense of female liberty and autonomy. An obsession with marriage. Women especially are indoctrinated into believing that marriage is the purpose of their existence. Extreme domestic abuse, which is often justified, excused, and brushed under the carpet by the community at large and by religious leaders in particular. Honor killings. I'm sorry, I'm tired, guys. I'm sorry, I'm slurring. Honor killings perpetuated against Muslim women who become too westernized in the eyes of their families, or who, flagrantly infringe upon religious sexual morality. Arranged marriage, forced marriage, child marriage, especially the marriage of younger girls to older men. I remember, the percentage of Muslims in Muslim communities to whom this applies varies hugely from one phenomenon to the next, and from one community to the next. This is a very broad swath of issues I'm looking at here. Incest, specifically cousin marriage. This is almost exclusively like a Pakistani problem.
So before you carry on with that, some of the things that you're mentioning sound un-Islamic to me.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Some of these things...
The problem is that a lot of local culture is taught along with the Islamic culture.
That's exactly right.
Because people haven't bothered to look or aren't educated enough to look in certain poor countries, they aren't aware of what is cultural and what is based on the religion. And I have actually spoken to people before where they've talked about things and said, oh, I have to, it's my religion. And I've told them, no, that's a load of rubbish. Like, for example, you just saying that a lot of people marry their cousins. And, I can't remember, actually. What does the Quran say about marrying cousins?
It's acceptable. Muhammad married his cousins.
Yeah, it's aunts and uncles, isn't it, that you can't marry?
It's something obscure.
Yeah. But anyway, the fact is there's nothing in Islam that I'm aware of that encourages people to marry their own cousins. It's probably, I'm just guessing now, it's probably done in Pakistan a lot, something to do with dowries. Maybe, you give the dowry to another member of the same family and you don't all get poor. I'm just having a guess at that. But, some of these things that you're mentioning have actually got nothing to do with the religion at all.
Yes, that's
just
right.
People practicing them don't know that they've got nothing to do with the religion.
Exactly, and so under the shield of religion, these erroneously often, not always, but often erroneously, these kind of practices are preserved. Like exactly what you said, case in point, cousin marriage. Whichever idiot Pakistani you're talking to obviously doesn't realize it, but within these immigrant communities, these kind of practices do sneak in and are maintained under the shield of religion, and that's the point. I mean, some of these things are actively promoted within the religion. Like, for example, genital mutilation. In the case of male genital mutilation, i.e., what they call circumcision, that is an example of a cultural custom that is actively promoting the religion. And then, but also female genital mutilation is not really. It's more of an African cultural thing. But I just want to finish this list because it's so much fun. Self-pitying conspiracy theories, particularly regarding the New World Order, the Illuminati, the CIA, Zionism, etc. A victim mentality accompanied by faux outrage. So, faux outrage like over the Muhammad cartoons, for example. A superiority complex, such as holding Islam or Sharia to be the perfect system of life. Historical delusions, such as Islam abolished slavery, Islam invented science, Islam liberated women, etc. Arabian cultural customs in the form of Arabian hairstyles and Arabian clothing, notably the hijab. Superstitious religious alternative medicine. Irrational and arbitrary dietary codes, namely the custom of halal. Irrational and arbitrary economic ideals and practices, namely Islamic banking. The selective rejection of science, particularly evolution. Ultra-conservative morality, particularly in regards to the application of corporal and capital punishment. Anti-homosexual bigotry, including the belief that homosexuality is unnatural, immoral, and or deserving of the death penalty. Anti-apostate bigotry, particularly the belief that apostates should be killed. Anti-Jewish and anti-Israeli bigotry, such as the belief that Jews control the world, or that Israel carried out 9/11. Actually, according to an academic article published in 2006, European Muslims are 7.8 times more likely than European Christians to be hostile towards Jews. And synonymous anti-American and anti-Western prejudice, so manifesting as a hatred and rejection of Western influence and Western lifestyle. And as I said before, the extent to which any of these in particular apply to any given Muslim community and to what percentage of these communities is unknown to me, and I would not be as confident to say that it is the majority at all. But the reality is, as all my extensive sources show, that these are things that in some communities have been preserved, and I'm saying under the shield of religion. And a notable factor preventing the elimination of this kind of cultural baggage via the natural process of integration is the fact that the religious leaders of Muslim immigrant communities often receive their religious education overseas or are simply from overseas, where such cultural baggage is openly promulgated. These religious leaders help to strengthen the cultural baggage of Muslim immigrant communities, reinforcing social conservatism and impeding integration. And so-called faith schools can also have this effect on Muslim immigrants, segregating Muslim children away from non-Muslim children and indoctrinating them with many of the problematic beliefs and practices listed above, especially like creationism, anti-evolutionism, that kind of crap.
You know, if the Jews did control the world, it would be a masterwork of deception because they seem to be this hot potato passed around. Loony Christians say that Muslims, atheists, and Jews are all working against them. Right-wing Muslims are saying, well, the Christians and the Jews and the atheists are all working against us. And then we, of course, are opposed to, you know, all three Abrahamic faiths. So how the Jews became popular enough with the right people to consolidate the power to such, they must have really planned that one out pretty carefully. Okay, so anyway, we're going to bring in Mohammed Mohsin, who has been waiting for a while. And he wanted to talk about, I wrote it down, he wanted to talk about immigration in Britain. I linked that video to YouTube. I don't know if it's so bad that I don't even want to. There's this video on YouTube that was on par with Innocence of Muslims for just being bad and being wrong, but it cracks me up because it's just so over the top and racist. It's called Attack on the White Nation. Has anyone seen that? I know. Obviously, I showed it to Rash. Was that the first time you saw it? Kling had seen it before.
It's the first time I'd seen it.
Yeah.
Oh God, I couldn't watch it all. It was just.
Everyone I've shown it to, they can't sit all the way through it. But I thought it was hilarious because it was just so over the top. They're talking about the Jews go around injecting Europeans with Jew blood. And then this Jew with the acidic hair and hat, he pulls open this contraption, and a gate labeled non-European gate opens, and all that comes out of it is like this black sludge that starts like devouring people. I'm sorry, but that's just hilarious. No, I'm not condoning anything it says, obviously, but sometimes you find stuff on the net that is just so over the top racist and bad shit that my only response is to laugh at it. I can't imagine who would take that seriously. But no, that's one of my favorite vids on YouTube now.
Yeah, and there was a bit where the bit that annoyed me while I turned it off was this Jew's going round basically beating up everyone from all the other countries and making them do what they're told, and then goes to Germany and a Nazi stands up to him and says no and punches him, and he falls back and hits a sign that says Palestine. Right? And then the Jew gets up, looks around, grabs the Palestine and sticks Israel in it and then goes, Holocaust! Holocaust!
Yeah.
Holocaust! And then everyone's turning and pointing at the Nazis going, you're evil, you are, you're evil.
And the guy representing Nazism was like, what? He's started...
and the Jews were like, ha ha ha, they all fell for my plan and believed these harmless Nazis were really evil.
Yeah.
All I had to do is let them kill 6 or 7 million of us.
They're so evil. They're so evil, Rash. They don't even care. They'll just let... No.
Well, they do go around drinking babies' blood.
Yeah, and all that.
Yeah. It's like, what is it? Bar mitzvah or something. I don't remember what the event is, but what they do is they go out and find virgin children the day before, cut their veins, let them bleed to death, and I don't know what the recipe is, but apparently they make bread out of the blood.
It's funny that
this could do stuff like that.
It's funny that you brought up the issue of dead babies, because I just watched Train Spotting for the first time a couple days ago because someone recommended it, and I don't know, for those of you who've seen it, there's this scene where this heroin addict's baby is dead, and she's screaming and crying, and the baby is like, because she's always high, she didn't realize it was dead for a while, so it's already kind of like turning blue, and they show the dead baby, and then last night I had a dream that I told a dead baby joke, and then I turned around, and the lady was standing right there. And I thought, oh, this is terrible. I can't believe I told a dead baby joke right in front of the lady whose baby just died. And I said, oh, miss, I'm so sorry. I forgot. And yeah, I just felt awful about it. So,
well, yeah, that's totally relevant to Muslim immigration, yeah, man. That's just that fits right into the cultural baggage and the thing about the effect of anti-Muslim bigotry. I'm glad you're on the show, mate.
What is this show about? Where am I? I'm 12, and what's this? Okay, Mohammed, thank you for joining the show. What do you have for us today?
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is going to be a little quick. But I wanted to comment on Muslim immigration in Britain, because that's a pretty hot topic in a lot of people's minds. Yeah. In the 1950s and 60s, when Muslims, particularly from the Pakistani community, started to migrate to Britain, they weren't really religious per se. I mean, the derogatory word Paki, for example, used to refer to rich Pakistanis who made a lot of money, who were businessmen. And, these people weren't really religious, and they didn't really cause a lot of trouble to the indigenous white community in Britain. But up until the 70s, right around the Iranian Revolution and the rise of Saudi oil money, there seemed to be this Wahhabism creeping into Muslims in Britain. And that, to me, seems to exacerbate these problems in Britain for Muslims and non-Muslims in that country. So I think that if you somehow... promote, I don't think that these people will leave Islam. I think that Islam seems to be rooted in their culture. So if we can somehow take away the Wahhabi Saudi influence on these Muslim people by training, indigenous, not indigenous, but training, imams in colleges in Britain to teach them about Islam that isn't really Wahhabi Saudi influence, I think that the relations between British people or indigenous British people and Muslims in the UK will be better.
Actually, this leads exactly into my conclusion, or the conclusion of my script or whatever. Basically, the solutions for the solutions for this Muslim immigration problem.
You know this part of your script, the solution. It's not entitled the final solution, is it?
Let me just alter that. Not anymore.
Nothing about Holland camps, ovens.
Not anymore.
No.
Look. Essentially, as just a quick recap. So, global Salafism. So, what Muhammad Muslim is saying is basically confirming. It's what I was saying before. This Salafi spread, this Islamism, this Hadithism, in the 70s and the 80s. And then, of course, anti-Muslim bigotry and cultural baggage. So these are the kind of the factors. These are the creating the actual problems with Muslim immigrant communities today. The solution, I would say, comes in 4 steps. And as Muslim says, step 1 is the exposure and ostracization of foreign Wahhabi Salafi funding and influences, especially from nations such as Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar. Second, the abolition of so-called faith schools, i.e. the elimination of the institutionalized indoctrination of children into the cultural baggage alluded to earlier. 3, and this is just kind of like my personal one here, a rigorous intellectual discourse with Muslim community leaders and public figures, anti-secularist and conservative Muslim pundits and religious leaders such as Anjem Choudhury, Hamza Sortsis, etc., need to be marginalized and discredited. And number 4, and this is actually the most important one, and again, this is recommended by the RAND Corporation, and this is exactly what Muhammad Muslim was saying, or this is kind of relates to that. Number 4 is the empowerment of liberal and progressive Muslim groups and organizations working together with their Western host nations at the expense of conservative and traditionalist Muslim groups and organizations. So if those 4 steps are taken, especially the last one, which I think is the most important, it is likely that the problems of Muslim immigration will be resolved.
Okay, see, the last item that you said was more important. This is a major problem for me, because I've become less and less prone to letting liberals off the hook. Because let's face it, a lot of the more liberal Muslim defenders and apologists, they're just liars, pure and simple. And I don't feel... I mean, normally I can leave them relatively unmolested, but if someone comes onto the show and says, oh, well, I mean, for example, Reza Aslan, is just, that guy pisses me off so much. I mean, he comes across as being really friendly, but then he lies and lies and lies and lies. He was on public television not that long ago, and he said, the Quran talks about equality between the genders. Now, I don't care I don't care that he thinks he's working for a good cause. That's just a bald-faced lie. The Quran says the exact opposite. And I can't play along with that, really. I mean, if those people do their own thing and obviously they're much easier to coexist with. I mean, I'd rather have him as a neighbor than someone who, someone as obnoxious as Anjem Choudhury or someone who is truly crazy. But I don't feel we should let them off the hook. I think that they might as well proceed directly to secularism. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
But I mean, I think that's the point is that we don't have to agree with them. Like, we can, on an intellectual level, I can disagree and absolutely think that their theology and their beliefs is a load of crap. But on a practical level, I can live with them, and I can promote them and say, yeah, these guys. I mean, I can assist them in that respect, because what matters is if they are progressive and liberal. So if they are, then even though I think their beliefs might be inconsistent or silly or incompatible in reality with the scriptures of Islam, I can live with that. I cannot live with someone like Anjem Choudhury. I cannot live with someone who thinks that we should kill gay people, for example. I'm not saying that Anjem Choudhury does. I haven't looked that up. But for example, I cannot live with someone who thinks that, women are inferior to men or treats women as inferior to men. This kind of thing. So it's like it's the compromise that we make with Christians. Most Christians don't believe that we should go on a crusade anymore. And even though I think that their theology may be crap, I can live with most of them. I disagree with them intellectually, but I can live with them, and I can sort of empower them or give them, you know, at the expense of dickheads like the Westboro Baptist Church.
Well, I mean, but aren't we holding them to two very different standards? We don't let Christians off the hook either for ignorance of the Scripture or selling Christianity as being more progressive from a scriptural standpoint than it actually is. You know, I'll gladly take some of those the verse where you can just pay a fine in silver and get off scot-free for a rape. I'll gladly rub that in the face of a Christian. But then, are we?
I'm not saying don't do that with Muslims, because I think that's fine. But I mean, irrespective of that, if you look at the Christian model and or how it worked with Christianity, Christians reinterpreted Christianity and adapted it to liberalism and progressivism or whatever. And there are Muslim groups and individuals who have done this. They just need to become the majority. These guys need to become the main representatives of these Muslim communities. And I think there won't be any problems. We can still disagree with them and go, ha, well, look, Muhammad married a 9-year-old or whatever. But they won't be a problem like they are now if they are the majority, if they do represent these communities. Because at the moment, of course, we have people like Anjem Chowdhury making so much noise, you know, and these groups, conservative groups, and these conservative individuals who are taking up the limelight, who are, at the moment, unfortunately, I would say, they are representing the Muslim communities. Wrongly, I would say, but they are. And so that needs to be dealt with, I think. Yeah.
Now, is Chowdhury, I don't know, how much do you know about the organization he works with? Is he just bought and paid for by some group of Salafis?
I don't know. I haven't put
where does he get his money?
I mean, he doesn't really interest me very much. He's just an idiot, so I haven't bothered to. I think, is he part of his Tahrir or whatever they're called?
No, he's not.
No, he's so utterly ridiculous that I actually believe he's a. I don't think he's real. He's having a laugh, or Zionist Jews are paying him to make Muslims look bad. Because I tell you, the kind of crap, you know, if after eating chicken you lick your first 3 fingers, that your fingers release an enzyme that help you to digest your food. Like, come on, nobody believes that crap, and this is the crap he's spouting. He'll go on telly talking about how people should be killed and what have you. You know, he's worse than a stereotype. He's a super stereotype. You know, because there's very few people in the world, I think, that are actually like him, especially from countries like the UK that aren't on some kind of medication. And he's like he's playing a part, you know. I find it really difficult to accept that he's a real person. Well, but the thing is, well, it's like I remember the once he was talking about you've got to cut the hands off people that steal. However, stealing cars is okay if you haven't locked your car in the garage, because stealing is only taking something that someone has tied down or secured in some way. If it's left free, then it belongs to everyone and people can just take it. I think, you know, chop your hands off if the car's parked in the garage, but if it's not, then they can rob it and there's no crime. I mean, who could actually believe that?
Well, but here's the thing: is a lot of the loonier people have the liturgical high ground over the more palatable liberal apologists. You know, I mean, if you have, you know, from our value system, you know, if someone says, okay, well, you know, chop someone's hand off, and then for example, what I was saying about Reza and some other guests they had on saying, oh yeah, the Quran says equality between the genders, and then another says, nope, even here in the 21st century, they get half the inheritance. They count for half. You know, you need 2 women for one to equal 1 male witness because they're forgetful. You know, if someone actually toes the line for what the Quran says, we'll say, well, he's an extremist. But he has the liturgical high ground. Are we really going to play this game of make-believe? Like a bunch of news anchors saying, okay, well, we're tracking Santa on our weather radar. You know, I can't do it. I just can't do it.
No, I think the problem is, though, is that it's not whether you believe that his interpretation is correct or not. I think the issue is that most UK Muslims would say that his interpretation is wrong. Whether they're right or wrong is irrelevant. Most Muslims in the UK, I think, would say that Andrew Chowdhury is a twat, and he's wrong. Now, the problem is whenever the word Muslim or Islam pops up on the news, who do they call in? Anjem Chowdhury. Well, why? Why would you bring in someone, put him on the news, who doesn't represent the opinion of the majority of people, who is identifying with? Why would you do that? And they do it because it's sensationalist. They want him to come in, say stuff about chopping people's heads off and throwing homosexuals off cliffs, and then go, there, this is what we want to hear, something controversial. But, you know, he doesn't represent most people, and I think the press should just stop putting him on the television. You know, you don't put people on the telly who stand around shouting the end of the world is nigh.
Well, but what if your scripture says the end of the world is nigh? Oh, by the way, Muhammad, did you have more for us, or should we let you go?
Actually, I have one last thing. I'm not sure if Kling brought this up or not, but I really think it doesn't matter if Muslims are being intellectually honest or not. I think that, religious scripture is always riddled with contradictions. Some extremists will interpret the Quran this way, and some liberal will interpret the Quran this way. And the only reason the extremist wins is because, he has more mosques. He has more imams who tell people that this is how the Quran is supposed to be interpreted. So I think that, for example, Wahhabism started out as a minor religious sect in Saudi Arabia. And the only reason why it's mainstream right now, supposedly, is because of money. So I think that... Yeah, petrodollars, exactly. And I lived in Pakistan, and I met Muslim groups who were actually pretty liberal, Sufi Muslim groups. And I asked them why weren't they getting their message across, and it's because they have no funding. Saudis get away with it because they have, petrodollars. These mosques, these imams like Anjem Chowdhury get away with it because they get funded by these mosques, which give them this money because of petrodollars. So I think that if you want a liberal form of Islam, no matter how intellectually dishonest, you need to fund these people. You need to give these people money to establish their doctrines, or sort of like what happened with Christianity. Christianity
really good PR campaign.
It's kind of
exactly.
ironic, isn't it, that the best way to reduce extremism is probably to delude people further by spreading your own softer version. And I agree, because the first Quran I ever picked up, I hadn't at the time realised that the stuff in brackets were comments. And in there it was like, oh, Allah hates those who X and Y, and in brackets it'll say, the Jews. So fight them, open bracket, the Jews, with your horses of war, open brackets, tanks and missiles. And it was only when I got as far as reading tanks and missiles, I thought, hang on a minute, this isn't 1,400-year-old text.
No, miracle.
Exactly. I'd be like, well, I don't like what it's saying, but how could a man 1,400 years ago have known about tanks and missiles? But then I realised, because I was really disgusted, and there's all these footnotes throughout it talking about how nasty Jews are and stuff like this, and it was a really, really awful version of the book. And this was the book that you get if you pop into a shop and say, can I have a Quran? They go, yes, this one's free, and they give it to you. So yeah, the way that they're getting this extremism spread is because they're the ones, they're not only undercutting the price of other Qurans, they're giving them away free. And, the only reason you would buy a different Quran is if you knew that the one you were just given was a load of crap.
Also, I disagree with the idea that because there's more of a scriptural basis for extremism or whatever, that it'll be more popular. I think that's nonsense. Look at Christianity. The Bible is very, very explicit in its sexism, but I don't think I could convince, or I don't think any Christian I know could be convinced to be a sexist Christian because the Bible says so. Because people don't choose. It never works like that. People don't really care what it actually says. It's how they apply it, how it reflects to their culture and their cultural situation. And at the moment, there's a lot of conflict in the Middle East and so on and so forth. And I think you'll find, and it's being spread by this Saudi and Wahhabism is spreading in these places of social malaise. So I think really it's irrelevant that the Wahhabis or whatever could have more of a scriptural basis than liberals. I don't think it matters at all, because it certainly doesn't matter with Christians. No one looks at the Westboro Baptist Church and goes, "Oh wow, because they interpret the Bible more literally than me, and they're so convincing." No one ever does that. Like, no one cares.
Well, allow me to clarify my position. I'm not suggesting that it will become more popular. I think that the evidence is overwhelmingly against that. In the absence of this bonfire of money that the Wahhabis have to just pour, before that umbilical cord of funds was in place, you saw both in many traditional African and Asian communities and also in expatriate communities, you saw this drift towards more liberalism that nobody was really leading. Nobody was pioneering. It's just that they gradually began to abandon this system of very unrealistic strictures and guidelines. So I would agree that the time would be, all of the things being equal, time would be against the more conservative and literal interpretations. What I was saying is that I just personally have a very hard time letting people off the hook just because they tell me what I want to hear. I think...
Yeah.
I mean, and the thing is, I can't deny that there's some merit to looking the other way as people fudge their scriptures to be more realistic or ignore them altogether. But I guess I just lack the ability to play along. I lack the ability to play along and say, wait, let me finish. I lack the ability to say, this is the divine word of God, but we're not going to do what it says, because God doesn't know what he's talking about.
I mean, here's the thing, right? For example, I have a friend. She is an extremely progressive and liberal Muslim. She's one of the most, she's a lot more progressive and liberal than a lot of non-Muslims I know. And I mean, I bag her out all the time. I criticize her religious views all the time. So I don't have to play along and pretend that they're good. But I make it clear to her that, I respect her as a person and her kind of views because she is progressive and she is liberal. And so I can live with her. I can get along with that kind of person. So even though I may not intellectually respect liberal and progressive Islam, I can make it very clear that I can live with it and that, I can tolerate it and it can tolerate me. That's the point, I think.
All right, Mohammed, thank you for your input. We have two more. I'm going to let you go now. Salam. And thank you. We have two more callers. I'm going to try to get through them really quickly, and then we'll wrap things up. We're nearing the end of our time. First is Squiggly Pig from Denmark, who wants to talk about the media's role in the offensive, or the cartoons that came out in Denmark. Squizzelf, are you with us?
Yes. What's up?
Thank you for joining us. What do you have for us today?
Yeah, of course, there was the whole, I didn't know if you caught it, that little thing about the cartoons that were made in Denmark. There were a lot of cartoons, but most of what you would see in the Muslim world be expressed as the ones that were controversial was simply the one where he had the bomb in his hat. In his turban instead, and that was really, of course, he actually talked about how some of the imams from Denmark went down to Arabia or just practically the Middle East and went down to the Gaza port. Yeah, but sorry.
I just have... Go ahead, sorry.
Practically, what it came out of that was that they pretty much made an elephant out of a mosquito. Because really it was simply a matter of freedom of expression. But that what we didn't, and we all saw that, the burning of Danish flag and all that stuff, and attacks in Danish embassies. But what we did not see was, I know that for a lot of people, the word mainstream or moderate Muslim is sort of that does not exist. But we didn't really see a whole lot of every people's. In the Middle East, every man's reaction to it, because it was all covered up in the look at this sensationalism. Don't look at the people over there minding their everyday life who we might actually want to know the opinions of, but look at these guys, they're burning the Danish flag. And that, of course, doesn't send a very good message. I mean, for one thing, of course, you can always say that it was the minority that were pretty much staunched in their fanaticism, but still, I mean, what I would have loved to have seen was actually the media behaving like the media and going out and getting information rather than just showing a lot of people being stupid, because, I mean, that's simply not good journalism. I'd like to know your opinions on how the media of the world, not just the U.S., because we all know Fox News is a bunch of BS when it comes to this, but the media over the world hasn't been very good when it comes to that. And as far as I know, not even Al Jazeera. I mean...
what you're saying is with... I think it's noted... What am I saying, potato? It ought to be noted that, for example, in Denmark, when the cartoons initially happened... nothing really happened. Like some Muslim groups complained, but there were no riots. They decided. Tarek Ramadan mentions this in the discussion he had with Christopher Hitchens, I believe, and they decided not to actually do anything major about it. They just complained, and that was that. And it was only after this big concerted political effort of these certain imams throughout and these politicians in the Muslim world that this became an issue at all. So I think that's notable. That seemingly, I guess you could say, the mainstream or the majority decided not to do anything about it. You could say. I mean, it is interesting that nowadays, for example, in Libya, you have. The media is now sort of covering all the counter-protests to the violence, and all these, like when the in Benghazi happened, and those whoever it was who attacked the American embassy attacked it, you have all these counter-protests and all these people flooding out in the streets with signs saying, "This is not my prophet," incorrectly spelled, but still, PROFIT. But still, you know what I mean, like. So it's interesting watching that process now.
I think it's about correctly, but their English is probably better than your ability to speak their language. I saw some video of some guys, Muslim guys, trying to burn a flag, and they always burn the American flag. I noticed, if the Danish cartoons are printed, they'll ultimately try to destroy the Danish embassy and stuff, and then the American and Jewish flags while they're there. I remember some video, I think it was on one of Thunderfoot's videos, and they're trying to burn this flag, and they just can't set fire to the flag, and they're pouring flammable liquid on it and trying to set fire to it and still failing. Eventually they stand really still, it lights up, it starts to burn, and then all of a sudden, Allah is the greatest! Oh yeah, it could describe Allah's power there. 10 minutes to set fire to a bit of material. Well done, Alan.
Also, one little question. I've begun to look into what Hadiths are. And as far as I've been able to find out, it's practically just the extrapolations of the meanings of texts in the Quran. Pretty much what they try to do is to view them in like a modern light. Because, of course, it's horribly outdated.
Tafsirs and the commentaries. And the Hadiths. Once upon a time, it's like my nan's uncle's brother's sister's cousin once walked past Muhammad and he had a hat on, So therefore, we're allowed to wear hats. That's hadiths.
It depends what perspective you take, because some Islamologists, some scholars, like academics of Islam, as opposed to like a religious scholar, like so-called Orientalists, have actually theorized that the hadiths were generated in the exegetical process in the effort to understand the Quran. So in order to try and actually understand and give meaning to the text from wherever it came from, later Muslims, especially during the Abbasid era, actually fabricated most of the hadiths as an extrapolation from the Quran. But according to Muslim tradition, and I would say probably, most Islamologists accept some hadiths. Hadiths are basically, as the Rationalizer was saying, the recorded oral traditions of the stuff that Muhammad did. But most of them are crap. Like, for example, I've got here in my hands right now the Tabaqat of Ibn Sa'd, which is actually one of the oldest Muslim historical sources. And it's amazing how obviously fabricated some of these hadiths are. For example, there is a hadith here concerning Muhammad's daughter Zainab, and it says, Anas bin Malik said, "I saw Zainab, the daughter of the Messenger of God, wearing a striped silk cloak." Okay, cool. But Muhammad had another daughter, supposedly named Kulthum, and under her heading, it says, "It is related from Anas bin Malik that he saw Kulthum, the daughter of the Messenger of God, wearing a striped silk cloak." It is the exact same hadith, but they have simply changed the character involved. So one of those is fake.
Well, the Bible says that different people were outside the grave of Jesus, so
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of it is just nonsense. A lot of it is just...
Both stories are equally true.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize that we were resorting to sophistry.
Sophistry? This is...
Sorry, so truth, logic, reason, evidence. Like, this is Islam plus.
Well, I was thinking of his mentioning the different people outside the tomb. They will say both stories are equally true, just in different ways.
They actually complement each other.
Yeah. Exactly. Criminy.
I love that story of Jesus with the different people, and in some of the Gospels it says, and then Jesus went away, or something like, and that was the end, or he said, "I'll meet you in so-and-so place," but then the story ends. And this thing I was watching, and he was saying, what a terrible way to end a story. He comes back from the dead, says, "Look, I've come back from the dead, I'll meet you down the road tonight," and then the story ends. And they said that's exactly what someone must have thought in the past, because this bit of text was added only a few hundred years ago, and then they went there and they met him. It's like someone was reading it going, you can't end a story like that, It's obvious they're plugging for a follow-up film. People aren't going to be happy about that. Because everyone hates those films, don't they, where you sit there for 2 hours, it gets to the end, and you know that the 2-hour film you just watched is only half of the story. Everyone hates one of those films. Well, I'll just finish it off.
Lord of the Rings.
Well, just finish it off so that, people don't get pissed off. I hated Lord of the Rings the first time I saw it. It was just, my impression of it was just, here's a ring, don't put it on because it causes trouble. Oh no, some people are coming, let's run over there. And they run over there and go, oh no, they're coming here now, let's run over there. And they do that a few times, and then they stand on a rock and go, see that over there? That's where we go, and I'm glad you're coming with me.
Blasphemy,
and then that's the end.
Blasphemy.
Yeah, let's throw the ring to the bottom of the ocean. Oh, we can't do that because... Just go.
I reject this hate. This bigotry towards Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
The inimitable Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, pointing out...
I have here next to me the extended edition of Lord of the Rings, special DVD extended edition. So just you be careful who you're talking to.
Lord of the Rings with the tops here.
I've been
Power of
to
Nokia
Sarehole Mill.
compels you.
You know Sarehole Mill? Have you heard of Sarehole Mill?
No, what?
I don't know, you proclaim to be these Lord of the Rings fans and you've never even heard of Sarehole Mill. It's like the Hag of Tolkienism. It's the place of his inspiration, Sarehole Mill, where he used to go in his childhood, and they used to be chased away by a baker or something like that. And then further down the road, there's these two towers and stuff like that. And there's all these landmarks around the area. And if you walk around by the mill, it looks like, it's almost as if it's a miniature version of Lord of the Rings film, all the streams and everything. Oh, you're useless, you are. If you proclaim to be Tolkien followers and you've never even heard of Sarehole Mill.
Well, as with religion, the prerequisite of being a fan is to be ignorant and stupid. So to not understand. So get off my back, mate.
All right, you guys get on my case for getting off topic. Okay, I'm going to let you go, Squiggly. We have one more caller. Thanks for your input. Take care. I don't think we even came close to answering his question. But fuck him. No. Just kidding.
Did he have a question? What was his question? I don't remember.
No, it was the issue of the media coverage of extremism and the ignoring moderate responses, and I thought we did discuss that and address that. So,
Photon, thank you for joining us.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yes.
You infidel all going to hell. I will bomb. Okay, I'm just fucking around with that, right? All right, I've been on the show a couple of times, so I hope I don't have to introduce myself again.
Of course not.
Okay, so I just wanted, you guys were having this discussion about, well, first of all, I just want to mention, Anjem Chowdhury does believe everything he's saying. It's not like he's trolling you guys. I've lived with people like him, and I still have a lot of friends who are like, they believe the stuff. The insanity that goes on in their mind is incomprehensible. You go to any Muslim forum, right, discussion forum, you have conversation with these guys, and you're like, holy shit, these guys are living on a different planet.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. Someone just sent a message.
Don't worry about it. Just keep
okay, yeah, fine. All right. Okay. All right. The real issue that I did want to talk about is like when you guys were discussing about whether how do you promote a more liberal form of Islam and how do you drown out Wahhabism and so on. Now, the thing is, if say for example Saudi Arabia, for example, was like 10 times richer than it already is, and it says, you know what, we think it's politically useful for us to promote Mormonism as the true form of Christianity in the U.S. How's that going to work out? It's going to be a disaster, because like everyone who's actually aware of like the historical origin of Mormonism or any other crazy Mormonism is like really far off, but let's just take that as an example. We know Mormonism is a fake. There's no credible historian who can actually make a strong case for Mormonism being the actual faith of Jesus Christ. So the idea of promoting liberalism as the mainstream form of Islam is doomed to failure, just because the liberal form of Islam, we can verify for ourselves, is not the true form of Islam. Now, Klingschor made the counter-argument that, wait a second, Christians don't believe in the Bible, the majority of Jews don't believe in the teaching of the Old Testament, but that's a false equivalence. Keep in mind that the Old Testament wasn't created, at least the Pentateuch, the first 5 books, they weren't written by Moses. All historical scholarship knows now that the Old Testament was composed over a period of 1,000 years, like around 800 to maybe 1,200 years. So the internal inconsistency of the Old Testament itself is so massive that you can actually have a vast array of interpretations without actually, rejecting the whole book. Because you can reject parts of the book, you can reject a whole vast section of the book, but you can still accept, be true to certain parts of the Old Testament, because it's just crazy talk, right? Like Old Testament itself is internally massively inconsistent. The New Testament, the life, the stuff that Christians claim to follow. Remember, the New Testament is supposed to like quote complete the law, but it actually just rejects like 90% of the law. Jesus comes and says, "Oh no, you can't stone her unless you've not sinned." Well, how about we apply that to thieves? Like, can you imprison a person who's stolen stuff? Because the only person who can imprison someone else is someone who hasn't sinned in his life. The New Testament religious beliefs are actually contrary to the Old Testament because of Paul's teaching and so on.
Wait, like, it looks like we might have some technical difficulties with the recording, so let's all stop.
Yeah, that's fine. Continue, please do.
Are you certain we're recording?
Yeah.
Okay. Just to be sure, Photon, could you say all of that again from the very beginning?
Are you kidding? Are you serious?
No. I mean, so some of it may have been lost.
Okay. No, I'll go again. It's not a problem for me. I thought like maybe you're just messing around. Like you like to.
Consider this though. Consider this.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, no. There was something that you said that I liked, and that was about promoting Mormonism as a beneficiary religion in America. I think that's actually a good idea because at the moment, the Romney and Obama debate focused quite a lot on unemployment in America. And I think that if all Americans became Mormons, there would be so much employment in the Mormon underwear business that they could probably fix the economy. Everyone would look a bit silly when they get into bed at night, but everyone would have jobs. I think it's a really credible suggestion. Well done.
I mean, I don't really know many Mormons in reality. From my limited experience, they seem to be a very milquetoast sort of sect without a lot. I mean, they have their underlying doctrine, if you've ever really gotten down to it, is incredibly bizarre, even by the standards of the religion that it's supposedly based off of. But I mean, it's interesting. What Klingschor and I were wrangling over before is accuracy in scripture versus the net impact, or how liberal a sect actually is. I mean, I guess maybe like Utah Mormons might be much more conservative, and then they would grate on me a lot more. But it to an extent might serve as an example of someone who is a sect that believes in things that are truly bizarre, and maybe a lot of social commandments as well that are truly counterproductive. But they've watered it down so much that it's seemingly not a problem. But like I said, if one of them made the mistake of getting into a discussion with it, and I were knowledgeable about Mormonism, which I'll admit I'm not. I've never really cared to read the Book of Mormon, but I wouldn't let them off the hook. I mean, going way back to what I was saying about Reza Aslan saying, there's equality for genders in the Quran, and I wouldn't let him off the hook. I can't play along with someone who says that a woman getting exactly half of what a man receives is equal. I mean, if you think it's fair, fine, that's your opinion. But for them to say 1/1 is equal to 1/2, a whole is the same as a half. In what dimension is that equal? I'm sorry, I got a little bit off topic, but
what you don't understand, Tariq Ramadan has made this clear. It is equal because the 50% that the girls get, they're free to spend on whatever they want, whereas the male that gets double, he must be the guardian of his sisters, and from his money he must spend to look after them. So you see, it is equal after all, because they get to go shopping and he has to buy the dinner.
All right, Klingschor, you wanted to jump in? You had something to say?
Oh yeah. So I mean, I think even it's true that the Bible is internally a clusterfuck. But I mean, consider even just established church doctrines that average Christians have just ignored or overthrown or just not adhered to. Like it's the same thing. So even though even though there was like a firm foundation for them to believe X, Y, and Z, or to accept slavery, or to hate homosexuals, irrespective of this, I mean, like the Bible's pretty freaking clear. Old Testament and New Testament, homosexuality is unacceptable. But the majority of Australian Christians are pro-gay marriage. So I mean, and they're fine with homosexuality. So I would note that.
Okay. Correct. Okay. Yeah, keep going. I just wanted to add to that point. Yeah.
I would also note that Wahhabism took it took about 300 years for Wahhabism to become it only became accepted in the 70s. Even then there was still a lot of opposition to it, but the Saudis literally bought people's silence, and that's ultimately why they literally have spent so much money on this that they have been able to pay off people and stop people from criticizing Wahhabism. But people hated Wahhabism for so long. Muslims hated Wahhabism. I mean, the Ottomans and the Khedivate of Egypt fought very long, against the Wahhabis and the Wahhabi invasions. So,
okay,
fun fact.
Yeah. So it's okay. So now let me talk about the differences between Christianity and Islam. Now, for Catholics, right? Yeah, gay marriage isn't allowed. But remember, Jesus wasn't a ruler. He wasn't like a political leader of the state he was in. So what rules did Jesus give about taxation? Like none. He just says, give the Caesar what is his due. Did he actually lead a government and implement the rules of the government? Muhammad did that. That's a massive difference. Remember, Jesus' ministry was 2.5, 3, I don't even know, was it 3 years? Did it even reach 3 years? It was just 2 years and a little more. How much could you preach in that time? How much government could you, how many laws of Sharia, for example, could you give in that time? Muhammad was a ruler of his state. Now, he had state laws. Now, anyway, let me just get back to the Christian point. The massive difference between Christianity and Islam, at least for most of Islam, is the Catholics, which is the majority of Christians, they have a living pope. This pope is the communication between him and God. 50 years ago, 60 years ago, the pope came out and said, yeah, it's evolution is not opposed to Christianity. You can believe in evolution without actually rejecting Christianity. That's the Catholic pope coming out and saying that. Because he is apparently still receiving revelation. He's still God's communicator, basically. So he can say that. Now, who in Islam can actually say, yeah, Muhammad didn't mean that stuff when he said about Adam being the first father. No one is in the position of the Pope in Islam. Someone might claim, I saw a person in the chat whose name was Shia Muslim, and he's saying, no, Ayatollah Khamenei, he's the Wali al-Faqih of the Muslimin. No, but still, there's a difference. Anyway, I don't want to get into the Shia Wali al-Faqih doctrine, but no one is in the position of legislating as you have in Christianity. And like I said, in Christianity, the gay marriage issue, the people are not okay. Christians are not okay with being gay. They're okay with allowing gay marriage to occur in society, because the difference between personal law and public political law is can exist in Christianity just because Christianity does not have a political system. Jesus was never the ruler of a nation. In Islam, Muhammad, we all know Muhammad got gays killed, and we know that the followers of Islam, the first 4 rightly guided caliphs, they got homosexuality was not allowed. They were burned to death as well quite often. So this is a big issue in Islam. You have a political system in Islam. People can actually look back in history and look at the political system, and if they want to be faithful towards it, they have to apply. Now, the second issue, and I'm trying to keep it as short as possible, right, because we're running out of time here. The Wahhabism issue, like you said, it's always, for some reason, people always say, the Wahhabis screwed everything up. Abdul Wahhab was following the teachings of Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah was following the teachings of Ahmed bin Hanbal. Ahmed bin Hanbal came out and said, you guys are all innovating because the earliest record of Muslims was such and such, and we have to follow. So the real Islam, if you want to know what real Islam is, how do we know there's so many sects of Islam, how do we know which one's the real Islam? Don't look at the Islamic sources. Look at the Western academic historical sources. Look at what historians almost agree that Muhammad preached, and look at the teachings of Wahhabism. Look at the teachings of Ibn Taymiyyah. Look at the teachings of Ahmed bin Hanbal. They are the actual teachings of Muhammad, and the teachings of Muhammad are Islam. It's not the teachings of which the majority of Muslim or the minority of Muslim or the Shiites or the Sunnis. The teachings of Muhammad are Islam. Yes, Muhammad wasn't consistent all the time, and this is the biggest issue that the Hanafis and all the other groups they make with Wahhabism, because Wahhabism isn't internally consistent because Muhammad wasn't consistent. But that's clear in the Quran itself. the genuine teachings of Islam are Wahhabis. And remember, Wahhabis never call themselves Wahhabis; they call themselves Salafis. Salafis means the preceding ones, the earliest Muslims. They are not like, okay, this is the thing, right? Sunni can say no, Wahhabis are wrong, but ask a Sunni to find ask a non-Wahhabi or non-Salafi Sunni to find a single hadith which the Wahhabis say are correct, but Sunnis say are not correct. You will not, because Wahhabis are actually, they filter out a lot of extra stuff. That's what the Wahhabis do. The rest of the mainstream Sunnis, they say, okay, yeah, one of the major differences between Wahhabis and non-Wahhabis is the acceptance of weak hadiths when it comes to superfluous or extra activities. For example, Wahhabis don't celebrate the birthday of Muhammad, and almost all the rest of the Sunnis and the Shiites, they celebrate the birthday of Muhammad. Now, what happened here is because there are some weak hadiths, like whose chains are not that strong, which says people used to be joyous on the occasion of Muhammad's birthday, and this was a significant. Now, I'm pretty sure those hadiths are fabricated because I don't think anyone really knew about when Muhammad was born, and people made that up. But either case, the Sunnis say, yeah, we can accept those hadiths because it's not something that's harming our faith. But Wahhabis say, no, we will only accept the most rigorously authenticated stuff, which is why there's nothing in Wahhabi doctrine that a non-Wahhabi Sunni can actually oppose. Yeah, Shiism is a different, completely, because they have a different source, so we don't worry about that. But a non-Wahhabi Sunni can actually oppose, because Wahhabis take the most authentic stuff and they stick to the most authentic stuff. Now, the problem with that is, if you act upon the what is most authentic in the life of Muhammad himself, you're left with a barbarian faith, like a medieval Iron Age. I don't know what age that is, but that's.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, but consider this. First of all, yes. Throughout the history of Islam, you regularly had Ibn Abdul Wahhab. It was, of course, just this is when people tell me that Islamism came about in response to Western colonialism. I always laugh because the chain goes all the way back. Even if we ignore Muhammad, Ibn Hanbal, the Kharijites, the Mihna of the Mu'tazila. I mean, so Ibn Taymiyyah. It goes on and on. So yeah, all the way up until modern times, there were many jihadi movements, I suppose you could say. So that's true, but I think the problem with this whole idea of true Islam is that it kind of rests upon which hadiths you accept, because different madhabs accept different hadiths as being more authentic, and that's what they base their practices on. Their how to pray, how to do this, how to do that. So I would say, for example, for the Wahhabis and their line, I guess they would take most of Ibn Hanbal's Musnad to be, really authentic.
That's not how it works. But
you know what I mean. You know what I mean. They have a set of hadiths that they consider to be authentic.
I know what you're saying, but no, that's not it. This is not how.
But this is the problem. It entirely depends on whether or not you consider those hadiths to be authentic. If you reject hadiths, then all the true Islam is gone, and you can make up your own Islam.
See, the issue isn't which hadith you this is why I give the example. Try to find a single hadith which the Wahhabis consider to be authentic, but non-Wahhabis say no, that's not authentic. Wahhabis take only the authentic, and when I say the authentic hadith, I mean they have such rigorous authentication standard that they don't accept anything that could be problematic. Which when I say authentic according to their own standard, I don't mean their own personal standard. I mean the standard of the majority of the early hadith ulama, right?
Hyper-traditional. Yeah, they are hyper-literalist. They're hyper-traditional.
So, for example, like Hanafis, for example, they have. Just let me give this example. Hanafis do not have major differences between Hanafis and Salafis, right? Now, Salafi and Wahhabi is the same thing, by the way. I just thought I'd let that point that out. So the difference between why Hanafis or say Shafis are more lenient it's because in certain issues, obviously, it's because Hanafis and Shafis accept weaker tradition, and when you accept weaker tradition, you have contradictory traditions, and then you can choose which tradition to follow. Wahhabis only accept the most authentic traditions, which is why they have fewer contradictions, and which is why the beliefs of the Wahhabis cannot be refuted through other Sunni beliefs. Except for some tangential issues about, like, some Wahhabis say the Quran is not created, but Muhammad had nothing to say about that. So those are tangential issues which are not related to practice.
Like, that's fine. Yeah, yes, the Wahhabis are following, this kind of the most purest Islam, whatever. I mean, that's fine. But I mean, it's as simple as this: if a progressive Muslim, most progressive Muslims tend to reject hadiths, and bam, it's gone. So like when you reject, or when they cherry pick the hadiths, or when they just reject them altogether. Which I think they should do anyway, because I tend to suspect the hadiths are nonsense, and you can draw upon academics like Joseph Schacht and Ignaz Goldziher for validation in this respect. Once you do that, I mean, it makes it much easier for progressive Muslims, and that's why most progressive and liberal Muslims tend to reject the hadiths anyway. So I mean, like, I agree that from the perspective of accuracy, if you do accept the hadiths, then the Wahhabis seem to be more in line. I mean, like, where did Ibn Hanbal, where did Ibn Abdul Wahhab get his influence, like get his inspiration from? He got it from Muhammad, of course, or following his blueprint. But that is prerequisite upon accepting the hadiths. I mean, and if you reject them, then it's very, that all falls away. Right. But interesting. But another thing is, I mean, even just like, so let's say that the analogy with Christians, because there's so many differences between the way that the religion developed and the way that the religion was structured as opposed to Islam. Look, Judaism. I mean, even though Judaism doesn't have a central authority, and I mean, the Jews had their own version of Sharia. Well, they didn't call it Sharia. I can't remember what the Jewish. Are you killing Muhammad, rash man? Killing the pineapple. But the
Muhammad didn't have a moustache, I don't think.
So you're killing yourself.
I think he had a beard. This isn't Muhammad.
With Judaism, I mean, Jews had a really convoluted, comprehensive, nitty-picky rabbinical law that they developed for all these different aspects of your life, and all these different same as Islam, same as fiqh, but the Jewish version. But Jews disregard it.
Well, but don't you have it kind of backwards? Didn't the Muslims really base a lot of their jurisprudence on a very similar model? I mean, a lot of hadiths were invented by Jews. I mean, what? Prior to Islam. Yeah, Jews have hadiths. Well, no, I thought you. But when you say hadith, people are going to make the connection you're talking about.
It is a tradition based upon a lineage of authorities, of different rabbis. This rabbi was told by this rabbi, who was told by this rabbi, who was told by this rabbi, that this rabbi said this. And this is the model that hadiths are based on, apparently.
Yeah. There's a lot. There's just too many striking similarities between how the jurisprudence and the hadith are structured and the previous Jewish traditions. I mean, clearly there was a great deal of influence, especially when you consider you had many converts from Judaism to Islam in the early days. So they're just going to carry over their skill set and also their habits over. So I think it's pretty.
But I want to make this point here. On if we accept the hadiths, that then yes, Wahhabis look like they've probably got it the most accurate. But that's prerequisite upon accepting the hadiths. And even then, I mean, if you take Christianity, most modern Christians, whether you choose, no matter what interpretation you take, what they are practicing is not in line with the Bible at all. If you look at the Old Testament, well, they're not about conquering people. If you look at the New Testament, well, they're getting rich. They're not. Jesus said, "Give up all your possessions, go out there, feed poor people, and do whatever." No Christian ever does that. Oh yeah, they might donate some stuff, but none of them follows what Jesus actually says. Or if you look at the example of the early Christian communities, no Christians act like them. No Christians. Well, some do, but for the overwhelming majority, don't live in these quasi-communist, commune societies or whatever, sharing everything, or no, most Christians are not messianic in the respect that they believe that the rapture is coming right around the corner. There are many, but most are not expecting the rapture to come every second, which is what the early Christians believed. So I mean, and even in the case of the Jews, I mean, they always disregard all the rabbinical law that was developed. Yeah. So I think it's, even though, yes, literally, if we presupposing Hadiths to be correct, Wahhabis may have the most sort of legitimacy scripturally. I don't think that matters, because people disregard that kind of thing all the time.
Well, the thing about Christianity is somehow, after a person who was the Son of God put in his 2 cents, this guy named Paul comes along, and previous Muslim scholars have rightfully pointed this out, that Paul comes along and he says, remember the law of Moses? Remember how Jesus said keep it? Yeah, don't keep the law of Moses. It doesn't matter anymore. And they said, well, this guy's just some guy, and the other guy was, depending on your interpretation, either the Son of God or God himself. But this other guy, his way is a lot easier. We'll do it his way. So, I mean, Christianity has a very convenient transition to not just this particular modern set of values and societal model, but to it's more open-ended in that regard, because it says Paul just unilaterally, on his own authority, just declares that the old law doesn't matter, and somehow that ends up in the scripture that as a whole is considered the word of God. And Christians just don't have any problem with that game of doublethink, it seems. But Islam doesn't have that. They're going the other direction. What they did is they started, if you look at the verses Muhammad revealed originally when he was preaching in Mecca, and seemed to have planned it on, converting instead of fighting. It's very conciliatory. I mean, that's where most of the positive pro-social verses seem to come from. And then he just gets angrier and more bitter, and then he becomes also more confident as his military force grows. And then he says, okay, well, if there seems to be a conflict in message, it's the later verse that matters. And the later verses, of course, he's this combination of angry and overconfident, and it really you can see the change in the style. If you were to actually make a chronological Quran, he's much more aggressive, much more prejudiced and open about and angry and so forth. And also he's getting in more of the sort of stranger, weirder, more peculiar laws governing his own believers. So like I said, Christians are going from conservative to liberal in their scripture from the front of the book to the back, but in the Quran you're going from liberal to conservative. So the momentum is in a different direction to begin with. But also there's no Paul. There's no Paul in Islam, and there can never be from a strict liturgical sense, because Muhammad, unlike every other dumbass religious leader in the history of the world, he thought, wait a minute, people are just going to come and try to change what I'm writing. So I've got something, and he says, my message, I'm the last prophet. What I say is current, doesn't need any upgrade, any renewal, any innovation, anything like that from the point of its revelation until the end of days. So that's it. Nobody can change. I mean, that didn't stop people from trying, but it was, I don't know why anyone didn't think of it before. Just say, I'm the last prophet. So so there can't really be a Paul. People who tried to innovate and create Islam Plus and make a snooty little group of liberals, that are practicing what they think is the real Islam, even though it not based in the Quran, they have no basis. They have no foundation. Unless the surah of the pen and paper, not the surah of the pen and paper, the hadith of the pen and paper, excuse me. Oh, that's a major flub right there. That's what I meant to say. The hadith of the pen and paper. Unless what he wrote with the pen and paper is, yeah, just forget everything I've said up to this point, and then he died. Unless that's what he said, and Umar just scrapped it. There's no basis for them, getting off the hook of these commandments. So there's some fundamental structures there. But I think that what most of the panel now and the previous callers agree with is a lot of it comes down to just the economic firepower that you have, and currently that is in favor of the Wahhabi sect, because they just have bottomless funds as long as they're being backed by key Saudi interests. Also, I'm sorry, I know I'm on a bit of a tangent. A couple of amusing things from the chat. First of all, they gave me the idea for the the Islam Plus joke, and then they also said we need to We need to convert all of the Muslims to the wasabi doctrine from Abdul ibn Wasab. And then that's just a much more progressive, more egalitarian doctrine, I guess. Rationalizer, you had your hand up?
No, I was probably just talking to my wife or something.
Oh, I thought you put your hand up, and I thought you wrote a program that puts your hand up only to put your fist up.
No, I didn't. No, I haven't done that. But
let's
there could be another prophet, because what you could have is someone could come and say, no, Muhammad was only the last one with regards to bringing laws. From that point on, nothing will change. I've just come to explain what he meant.
Well, that's what the Ahmadiyas and what the whatchamacallits, the Baha'u'llah, and the Shia, to the extent that the imams of Shiism said that, and it didn't go over too well with.
Yeah,
anyway.
They got killed.
All right.
Yeah, three out of 4 of the Orthodox caliphs were murdered. 9 out of the 11 of the predicted 12 imams were killed. One of them, he doesn't count because he's in a state of, he disappeared, and now he's
pretty much doesn't exist. Like, he didn't exist historically. Yeah.
Yeah, he's missing in action. But yes, so many of these guys died. It's like, religion of peace much. Okay, Photon, thank you for your contribution. We appreciate you. Call back anytime. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'll see you next time if you choose to call in. Okay, so.
Mormonism, by the way. Of course, Mormonism has its own miracles, just like Islam. There was one that I know of I think it was to do with horses. Joseph Smith had written something about horses being in America or something, and people mocked him and said, no, that's impossible. But they found horse remains in the North Pole, which proved that it was all once joined up and horses went via a land bridge into America. So how could Joseph Smith, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, have known that horses were there? So this is obviously a Mormon miracle, and I've actually had Mormons put this to me. And the easy refutation is probably to say, could you tell me which edition number the Book of Mormon is up to now? Because considering this was a golden tablet that was presented to Joseph Smith, and all Joseph Smith did was copy it word for word, strangely, it's needed a lot of revision over the years. So, for example, they do say, it was just due to printing mistakes, spelling errors and stuff. But that's untrue, because one of the things that they changed was they said that Mary was the mother of God, but then it later changed to Mary, the mother of the Son of God. And it's like, that's not a printing error, that's a change in a relationship. And some of the part says that all of the people all of the good people were white. But then that's been retranslated now. Clean and right rather than white. So it's like 1969 or something, I think. That until then, Mormonism was officially a racist religion, and it was only because
the verse. I had a verse that says, I don't know if it actually is one. Verse that says black people don't have souls. Actually, should be retranslated as black people have soul, and this is a miracle for seeing the soul music movement among African Americans.
Motown Records.
Yeah, like
Ross.
Winning.
Yeah. But yeah, Mormonism. I think I've actually had some Jehovah's Witnesses come around last week, and they're coming back next week to explain to me why Numbers 31:17 only young virgin women were spared, and all the children were put to death, and all the virgins. And I was really disappointed, actually, that they weren't Mormons, because all of them might have been a bit of a go with some Mormons. It might be a bit forward of me to ask them if I consider underpants, but, I would like to know if they're wearing them, at least. I'm sure they can tell me that.
I quickly tabbed out to look at some Mormon doctrine because I wanted to know what kind of stuff you get in the afterlife. And apparently, there's a doctrine where in the afterlife you have the potential to evolve into a godlike being yourself. and this is where I was getting this notion that you got your own planet, because I had heard you got your own planet from some terrible secondhand source, and wasn't sure if I wanted to say anything on the show. But apparently, from this site run by this Mormon guy, he says you can achieve godlike status, and then you can create as many worlds as you want. Because I was going to compare the Muslim afterlife with the Mormon afterlife, because they're really similar in terms of how they were, how they were originated, the guy getting the vision by the angel, and I just wanted to know how their afterlives were stacking up against each other. And I have to say, I've always said that Islam has one of the better afterlives, because I mean, who wouldn't want their own harem and live in this magical garden? But I mean, it seems like you could create as many harems and gardens as you wanted if you achieved godlike status.
You say who wouldn't want this harem? My wife, she wouldn't want it. So no, it's probably a good afterlife if you're a pervy man that likes to have an internal erection. But other than that, no, I can't see
Muhammad.
Sounds good to me.
All right, can we wrap this up now, guys? We're going a little bit over 2 hours, so let's keep this succinct. Okay?
Okay, well, thank you all for joining us. I hope you learned everything you wanted to know about Muslim immigration.
Then the coming white genocide.
Winter is coming.
The only hope is the Lannister family.
One man. It's always one man. Only one man can stop it. Robert Spencer.
No. The Rationalizer with that mustache.
Nothing to do with me.
Oh.
Don't blame me.
That's right. You didn't feature bloody EDL videos, you unpatriotic bastard. So clearly, Islamization has already claimed you. Yeah. Well, one man somewhere. His name's Steve, maybe. Anyway, if you want to, for those of you who are watching, or those of you live or on record, you can find us at facebook.com/The Gin and Tonic Show, or youtube.com/The Gin and Tonic Show, or twitter.com/The Gin and Tonic.
Okay, well, see you guys in another 2 weeks. Thank you very much. Take care.